Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Baldurs Gate Things You Didn't Know episode. Today we're talking about more lore and more useful, unexpected tricks to use in your own gameplay. A big thank you especially to the people who were talking about the whole Gale and Mystra lore in a recent episode. It's been really interesting to learn about and I'm excited to talk about it today, so let's get started with exactly that. We recently talked about Mystra's concerning history of manipulating young male sorcerers. The source of this came from Minsk, who spoke about Gale and his difficult current situation with Mystra. Minsk referenced the male magic users of his homeland and how they were trained in secret to seemingly hide from Mystra. Somehow they're able to use and learn magic without her influence or without her, actually knowing. Allegedly, anyway. He also said that she's been known to lure and entrap these young males, just like we see with Gale. That poses a few questions, like, is she like a groomer? But also, how are they using magic without her knowledge or help? Which we're going to get to. But to me, all of this is really interesting. I'm very new to the history and lore of these games, so this conversation, there's a lot of details that I'd love to hear more about. But first, we have a big question I asked at the time, which was, if Gale was to blow himself up, take out the brain, would that then not result in an awful situation for the coast? Meaning, the many people who have the illithid in their heads, like the true souls and so on, would they not all instantly transform and wreak havoc across the lands as mind flayers? Well, as it turns out, yes, that would literally be what would happen. Before I finish this thought, I want to make you guys aware that I'm about to talk spoilers for Gale's story in Act 2, and I'm also going to go on to eventually talk about Act 3 and his ending. So, heads up. This is thanks to Adam Kovalik in the comments, because if you do what Mystra asks at the end of Act 2, you blow up Gale right before the fight with Cleric, we get to see Gale actually do that and go for it, blowing up you, the party, and everything else in the surrounding area. As you can see though, it does say that while the Absolute is now defeated, the Sword Coast has an actual plague of mind flayers to now deal with. Maybe they've avoided like total destruction or true enslavement, but I'm not sure this is much better. This suggests to me that Mystra is either far from all-knowing and didn't really think about that, or she did and is just willing to take that massive defeat to avoid total destruction. And maybe for very good reason. Let's talk about why. We follow up on this topic thanks to Christian Kojo Karu. Christian explains the D&D cosmology and also Mystra, highlighting the fact that Mystra has been seen as a required component of the Forgotten Realms setting, all to do with regulating magic and how that needs to be a thing. Best shown with a terrible situation long ago with Karsus, which the crown the brain is wearing is the crown of Karsus. Karsus somehow managed to activate a 12th level spell called Karsus's Avatar. Apparently would have succeeded if not for his choice of god to take down and replace, which was Mistral, who was the goddess of magic at the time, because Mystra wasn't the always current one. He attempted to supplant her, resulting in all magic no longer functioning, which, as Christian says, hilariously meant his own 12th level spell to usurp the goddess stopped working. After that event, a girl was then chosen in the future to be the new god of magic, known as Mystra. But this wasn't the Mystra we know. That was the second incarnation of the goddess of magic. Ours is in fact the third one, just also named Mystra for some reason. It seems that magic needs someone to kind of manage it, as Christian says. It needs to be guided and regulated, and that's what Mystra does in her role. Without someone doing that, raw magic would be extremely dangerous, even devastating. So it seems Mystra is willing to damn the coast to prevent the crown from being, maybe for the Absolute's purposes, but also anyone else's, to threaten the weave and that whole situation. Let's loop back then to, if Mystra is so important to magic, how is it that these young male sorcerers can be hidden away from her and use magic without her knowing? Well, Christian suggests that these must be sorcerers, inherently magical, but even then it seems very unlikely that they'd be able to hide from Mystra in any case, because they're connected to her in theory. But this is where it gets interesting. Maybe our Mystra isn't as connected or as strong as Mistral or Mystra before. As Christian says, she's been shown to make mistakes, and this was followed up by the commenter Ares SG. According to Ares, when the third and current Mistral revived, she sort of became a combination of all three former versions, herself and two others, twisting her into a new person, one that's a bit more paranoid and a bit more unhinged. It's clear the weave isn't what it was, like how Gale found this whole issue with it and did try to return it to her, but it went wrong. Apparently she can't actually revoke the status of a chosen right now, meaning she can't take her essence back from those she gives it to. So she needs to test the chosen she's thinking of and make sure that they're very trustworthy. If they ever do anything she doesn't like, she seems to punish them really aggressively, which, as Ares says, is a good example when we look at Gale. It's said that Mystra wants the brain destroyed because of the crown it wears, right? Worried that the user could use magical power independent from the weave. What if she planned for Gale to go against her and not blow himself up, but then use the crown? Maybe with that power, he could return the cast-like weave to Mystra successfully, and maybe even restore her to what she once was. Maybe that's her gambit. Well, that is indeed an option in Gale's ending. You can surrender the crown and kind of restore things, or you can go against her. But if you do go against her, it does not go well. Gale challenges her, but things seem to go wrong if you do. Even with the orb and the crown, Gale loses. So perhaps she knew he couldn't challenge her even with all that power, which goes to show even now how powerful she still is. But yeah, all of that's really interesting to me, and so I want to say a big thank you to everyone who got involved in the topic. Those that know about this topic, I'd love to hear your thoughts and more about this. It has me wanting to read the lore and we'll understand the whole history in this situation. But moving on from the lore stuff, let's do a few other things in game. Like a neat update to a trick we've shown in this series before. There's that deluxe edition mask of the shapeshifter, which allows you to disguise yourself as another without actually expending a spell slot. Combine that with the Ring of Shapeshifter's boon, and that's great because while shapeshifted and wearing the ring, you get a +1 d4 to all checks, which is very potent. Even without the mask though, you could just do normal shapeshifting, still good as a combo. To make this more possible though, I covered how you get the ring without having to kill the strange ox as early as Act 1, which would mess things up. And to do that, all you need to do is make the strange ox trade with you by dealing damage to him, then letting him kill you. You then revive the dead character, come back, and get forgiveness from the strange ox by trading with him and buying the ring. It's quite strange, but that's how it works. Certainly a nice way to avoid having to kill the strange ox anyway. Now it turns out, like I said, there's something beyond the initial concept of being shapeshifted, wearing the ring, getting a buff. Because if you take the ring off after getting the buff itself, you keep the buff. But that technically means you can pass the shapeshifter helmet around to everyone in your party and the ring and get everyone buffed up with that +1 d4 to all checks for the entire party. This is really strong. Of course, the downside is you need to be in the shapeshifted form to maintain the buff, but if you think it's worth it, which to be fair, especially early game as well, I think it is, you could get this buff for everyone and really enjoy the benefits of that as early as Act 1. Next up, we have a little update from Nihil Zero. Last time we covered the insane situation with Glut and how you can bring him out of the Underdark and all the way to Act 2. Even more importantly, you can use him to revive children instead of monsters and use them for combat, which is wild in itself, but also broken because the children ignore the turn order of combat entirely, creating a weird situation in which they can kill everything unapologetically, ignoring the turn order, but it does seem to mess with the enemy's turn order because they attack your normal party during that. Anyway, you could arm the child with a weapon and even spells, but it seems after the recent patch number 4, things have changed. You can no longer arm the summons in the same way as before, according to Nihil, but there is a way around that, like returning weapons, like the returning pipe. You could put the weapon on the body of a pre-raised target, and then as it raises, you could have the weapon thrown and have it returned to them, and now it's equipped. Alternatively, you could reverse pickpocket them to put it in their inventory and then do the same thing, although you need to have Glut not be around at the time, otherwise it'll instantly be destroyed when it returns and is attempted to be equipped. Quite strange, but yeah, I imagine that'll work on any weapon that returns to you, like the legendary trident and so on. And Nihil also mentioned, as I didn't say last time, that elixirs last forever on these spore servants, the ones you raise using Glut. Since they can't long rest, it's not going to be cleansed. Therefore, you could give someone like Arabella permanent heal giant strength, which makes her attacks hit in a actually relevant way. Pretty important to mention. But yeah, if you didn't catch how to make all of this ridiculousness possible with Glut getting him to Act 2 and reviving Arabella and all that, check out the last episode of the Things You Didn't Know series. It's pretty insane. Moving on, I recently talked about a couple really strong buffs that don't last forever. Buffs you intentionally pop as you progress a region, right before, say, a key fight you know is coming up, like when you're doing a second or future playthrough. We have a new one to reference that we can use in Act 2 instead of, say, Act 3 like we've talked about with other ones. This comes from Ben and Nerdy Star Productions in the comments of last time. There's that small Sharon chapel in the center of the Wraithwind town in the Cursed Lands. By solving the little puzzle here, by touching the plaques around the base of the statue, you expose a stairway leading leading down. And here you have 3 stat check puzzles, the statues there, and so by passing the roll check on your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, you'll get a +5 buff to each until the next long rest. This is a perfect thing to go collect right before pushing, say, the Gauntlet of Shar, or maybe the finale of the Moonrise Towers. Also, by completing all 3 of these statues, you expose the True Seeker, a small room hidden inside, where if you use the Dagger of Shar to cut yourself an offering, you get some scrolls and potions in return, and you can also steal the dagger, but you'll have to fight your way out of there. The dagger itself is only a +1 enchanted option, but it does come with necrotic damage, which can be useful. Lastly, speaking of Act 2, we have one more from Donker Cape. They speak about the Summoned Golem Bell, an item you can get in Act 2 by speaking with a Necromancer in the Gauntlet of Shar. If you go, meet him, and lead the conversation to how you need help progressing the temple, he'll give you the Flesh Golem as a temporary one-use summon, limited only to the Gauntlet of Shar though. So if you don't use it there, you keep the item as a deadweight item, can't really do anything with like I did in my own playthrough. However, as it turns out, trying to ring the bell procs various dash item passives. That could be the Boots of Arcane Bolstering, or maybe the Line Breaker boots, as a clever way to get those effects going for yourself. And I'm not saying you can only use this in the Gauntlet of Shar. You can use this anywhere. It won't work as a summon for the golem outside of the Gauntlet of Shar, but it still procs the boots, meaning you get a fantastic free way to proc boot passives of this nature. It doesn't consume an action to proc the passives, just needs to be used in combat for it to work, which is easy enough. This is because the bell seemingly is tagged as a dash when you use it, so of course it triggers dash related items. You don't actually get a dash when you do it, it's just the game thinks you've dashed. That'll work with other items like the Speedy Light Feet and Spring Step Boots, so it's a very useful thing to know about if you're using these dash based items. But there you have it, another episode of Things You Didn't Know complete. Another big thank you to everyone in the comments helping out, getting involved in those discussions, providing interesting details to cover in this series. So as always, if you have anything to add or suggest for the videos, please drop it in the comments, or go like a comment if you think it should be in the video. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.